I've got a dumb question. Is there a map of all the boundaries yet
Yes.
as finalized so that you can see, let's say, where the property lines are going to be? I've never seen anything except for the one that we had originally, so I was sort of curious, and I have a friend asking because his property, be it on the Carlisle Road area, his property extends back to the Claudie. So of course, part of his land is going to be city and part outside. He's sort of curious as where the boundary will be.
Okay, it is 6:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you take a record of attendance, please. And the approval of the agenda, moved by.
So approved, Dale Maury.
Seconded, Bob Powell.
Moved by Dale, seconded by Bob Powell. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Conflict of interest disclosure, if any? Okay, we have the adoption of the minutes. It's been a busy summer, so the adoption of the minutes for the June 7th, 2022 meeting, moved by.
Judy,
Moved by Mayor Wilson Shee, seconded by.
Second by Ian.
Second by Ian Kitchen from Mackwick. Anything on the question? All those in
Question.
favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion is carried. Adoption of the minutes of the July 22nd, 2022 meeting, moved by.
Bob Powell.
Moved by Mayor Powell, second by.
Keith West.
Moved by, second by Keith West. Anything on the question?
Question.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Peter. The minutes I have in front of me are July 27th, 2022, not July 22nd.
Oh, sorry, I may have misspoke, sorry. It is July 27th, 27.
So do we have to go back and
Who
have a
moved
motion
that?
to?
Yeah, just to make sure that we're all clear on that. It was moved by Mayor Powell, seconded by Mayor West, I believe. That's in
Yes.
my memory here, folks.
No, that's
Anything
correct,
on-
Mr. Chair.
Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Meeting of August the 9th, 2022, moved by.
So
Judy,
moved, Ian Kitchen.
Moved by Mayor Wilson Shee, seconded by
Mayor Kitchen.
Mayor Kitchen. Anything on the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Minutes of August 22, 2022. Anything moved by, sorry.
Peter Morrison.
Moved by Peter Morrison, seconded by.
Second.
Dave Morrison.
Second by, sorry.
Stephen.
Moved by Stephen Sharp. Anything on the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, committee reports. Director Morrison, please, the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met on July 21st, 2022. In attendance were myself, Ian Kitchen, Derek Pleadwell, Stephen Sharp, David Duplessis, Brett McCrae, Mary Kay Linkton, Lonnie Forbes, and Tony Spares. The meeting was called to order by the chair at 5:35 p.m. The meeting began with a review of the second quarter of the post-closure fund. Our investments were in compliance with the allocation targets specified in the investment policy statement. The quarter can be best described as difficult, yielding a return of minus 9.94%. Mr. Spares explained that interest rate shock was one of the biggest contributors to the negative return, showing a huge drop in the month of June alone. He cautioned that the next 6 to 9 months will more than likely be volatile. However, he recommends keeping the status quo as our investment horizon is far into the future. Then Mr. McCrae advised the committee that the quartile rankings typically included in the staff report are no longer available on a quarterly basis. They will be provided annually from this point forward. Ms. Langdon then reviewed the second quarter financial results for the commission, which are attached to this report. She noted that the tonnage was about 850 tons above the 5-year average, which is being attributed to the increased population. Recycling had better than anticipated results this quarter due to higher than expected revenues from cardboard and scrap metal. The power generation facility continuing to generate more power than it has been in the last year. Expenses are over budget due to engine repairs and the rising cost of oil. That's with the power generation facility. Ms. Langdon gave an update on the budget process and where we sit with the first draft. There being no further business, the meeting was adjourned at 6:07 p.m., respectively submitted by myself. I move that the board receive the report of the Financial Committee dated September 8th, 2022.
You heard the motion. Can I have a seconder, please?
Judy.
Moved by Judy Wilson-Shi. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Peter. Finance Committee Draft Budget 2023. Director Morrison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met on August 22nd, 2022. In attendance were myself, Ian Kitchen, Greg Erickson, Stephen Sharp, Derek Pleadwell, Mary Kay Langton, and Brett McKay. The meeting was called to order by the chair at 2:03 p.m. I'm hearing voices. Is someone? Mr. McCrae advised.
Somebody's.
Dog. Mr. McCrae advised the committee that the process for budget approval will be different this year, as the minister will be the one approving the budget due to local government reform. Ms. Langdon then presented the draft 2023 budget for the Capital Region Service Commission and answered questions from committee members. The draft budget shows increased expenses to all divisions. The driving factors are salaries, insurance, and fuel increases. The tipping fee is proposed to stay at the same for 2023. This made possible by the large second previous year surplus in combination with the projected tonnage increase from 79,000 to 81,000 tons in 2023. There being no further business, the meeting was adjourned at 2:52 p.m. respectively submitted by myself. I move that the board receive the report of the Finance Committee dated September 8th, 2022.
You heard the motion. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Ian Kitchen.
Seconded by Ian Kitchen. Anything on the question?
Yes.
Yes, Judy.
Okay. Is this where I can comment? There were some information on both under solid waste division and under power generation. Can I bring up those comments?
Mr. Chair, if I could just speak to that. Mayor Wilson, she will be presenting the budget in full detail after this motion is completed. And there'll be opportunities to answer any specific questions that you might have at that point, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Because I thought that was with this report, separate from the draft budget, but I'll wait. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mike Chamberlain, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question on the insurance, 78% increase. Is that due to abnormal number of claims or what's happening there? Maybe Mary Kay could answer that. I don't know. Who would like to answer that?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It probably does have to do with some claims in the past. As you know, Mike, we have had a couple of fires at the landfill. So that would increase our premiums. But I think the cost of like building materials and all that stuff is driving up the price of insurance as well. So it's kind of a combination of a number of items.
I think those claims though, Mary Kay, were quite a while ago, and the insurance rate would have probably gone up the next year.
Mhm.
I expect insurance rates to go up, but 78% is quite a jump, and I think maybe it's time we got a second estimate on and spoke to another insurer, another broker, to see if we can do better. It just seems like a lot to me, 78%. Thank you.
And
It's very high.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add something to that
Yes,
point.
go ahead,
Mike, in my conversations with the other executive directors around the province, they've all experienced similar increases in the premiums over the past year. That it seems to be in line with what the industry is doing right now, province-wide, but we can certainly follow up and see if there's a more competitive rate out there.
Thank you, Brett.
You're welcome.
Okay, to go through the budget, are all those in favor
Mr.
then
Chair.
of the motion?
Just before,
Oh, sorry, Peter.
I thought I had my hand up. Maybe I didn't.
Yeah, I
On
didn't
the
see it.
insurance, it's got nothing to do with an industrial operation, but I received my home insurance premium notice a week or so ago, and the rates had gone up significantly. I chatted through with the broker, and they went out shopping for me, and what they came back with was like 30 or 40% higher. So be careful what we do.
Mhm.
I didn't accept that, by the way.
Mayor Rogers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and forgive me, I'm potentially confused right now. What is this motion? This is not approval of the budget. This is,
No.
what is the motion? What is the motion exactly?
To receive the report of the Finance Committee
To
on.
receive the report. Okay, good. Okay, perfect. Thank
Okay.
you. So any of our discussion on that, we move to a later motion.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for my confusion.
No problem. We have a mover and a seconder. Any other questions on the motion? If not, I'll go to vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. I now turn the floor over to Executive Director to present the budget overview for 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this will be a familiar refrain to those of you on the Finance Committee, and I suspect some of the others, but this is obviously an atypical year as far as the budget approval process goes, and it really deviates from past years in three important ways. The first, and Mayor Rogers just alluded to it, there will be no need for a motion approving the budget this year. The budget approval lies, the authority to approve the budget, that is, lies with the minister this year. And so the presentation of the budget to the board in this case will be for information purposes. It'll also be an opportunity to provide comment and ask any questions to staff, but ultimate approval of the budget will lie with the minister, and we expect that to take place in on or about, I believe, October 20th. Secondly, this budget deviates from past budgets in that we've included the new mandated services and the associated costs, and Mary Kay, when she goes through the budget in detail, will review those individually. The last major deviation, and I really want to focus in on this point, is our assumption on inflation. And in this case, as it pertains to our organization, the impacts on staffing levels given the current competitive employment market. So when we developed the budget, we began, obviously, it was several months ago. The year-over-year inflation was at 9%. Now it's since slowed to 8% because of gasoline pricing. However, the prices for consumer staples, as I'm sure we're all aware, and services have continued to increase rapidly. Should also be noted when we look at these numbers that there was a shortfall in our cost of living adjustment that we gave staff last year of 2.3%. And so these inflation-related challenges, they've all resulted in a reduction in the real earnings of our staff. And while shocking, when we see a number like 9%, that reduction in the real earnings, combined with the increasingly competitive job market, have made staffing a challenge. And for context, and I raised this, I believe, in our presentation to finance, or I believe Mary Kay did. Last month alone, we lost 5% of our employees to other employers who are paying more competitive rates. So I have a genuine concern as the executive director that if we allow that trend to continue through 2023, it's going to have an impact on our ability to remain as an effective organization. And it may have an impact on our ability to offer high quality services to the member communities that form what will be next year the Capital Region Service Commission. And so in order to avoid this scenario, and given the budget approval process and the fact that that lies with the minister this year, any support from directors, either written or verbal, would help potentially significant staffing related challenges in 2023. Again, those positions that became vacant in the past month alone have been very challenging to fill. And when I say challenging, I'm being diplomatic. We've been unable to fill them with the existing pay levels. So any support that the directors may be able to provide us would be potentially helpful. And the last comment I'd make on that point would that be important to note that the proposed 9% cost of living adjustment for 2023 that's included in this budget would only partially make up for last year's shortfall and would simply return our employees' purchasing power to near 2021 levels. So while it seems like a large number now, the reality of inflation and the impact that it's having on our employees has absolutely been challenging, and I think it's more than a fair number. But I don't want to dwell on that. With that, I guess, Mary Kay, we've got quite a significant package to go through, and so I'll turn it over to you, and you can start going through the numbers.
Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
I'm going to take a second here and share my screen. So I'm going to be taking you through the 2023 budget in detail. Can everybody see that okay? Perfect. So the budget that we're going to be reviewing today is actually the forms that are provided to us from the province. It's not the typical forms that we do review with the board, but we thought where the minister is going to be approving this budget, it's wise for us to stick to the one format that the department is used to seeing. So the budget overview that's included in your package, that's a comprehensive summary of what's included in this 2023 budget. So it's a really good starting point to read through because it highlights all of the information that you really need to know to understand this budget. So this is the operating and capital budgets for the Capital Region Service Commission for 2023. This is just the checklist that they provide to us. And this is a summary of the operating and capital budgets. So for the operating budget, you can see the various divisions that we have, including our new divisions that will be established as of January 1st, 2023. So all of these budgets added together give the Regional Service Commission a total operating budget of $15,684,157 for 2023. And we're going to go through each individual budget in detail. For capital budgets, now the majority of our divisions are not capital intensive with the exception of our solid waste facility. So we have a small amount of a capital budget for our local planning services. And then we have two large amounts, the first for solid waste services and the second for the power generation facility. So our total capital budget for the Service Commission for 2023 is $2,737,000. The next page that you have in front of you is just a conversion of the budget that we're going to review tonight into PSAB. So as you know, we are required to report our annual statements under PSAB. So we have to have a PSAB budget. So this form takes a balanced budget, which you see here. And I will note in the package that you received, there was a $20,000 surplus here. You just received an old copy. It's actually since been revised because it's a balanced budget. And it converts it into PSAB. So a balanced budget under municipal standards becomes a deficit budget under PSAB, $824,000. And the main reason for that is because you do have a large amount of amortization expense, which has to be budgeted under PSAB and not under the other standard. So the first division that we'll look at is corporate services. And corporate services are really the overhead of the company. They're the expenses that benefit the entire entity. So what we do is we accumulate those expenses and then they get allocated out to the various divisions based on how those divisions use them. So there's no revenue sources in corporate services. What you'll see is when we look at the individual divisions budgets, expense will come through as an allocation from corporate services. So our total corporate services budget for 2023 is $937,136. That is up from 2022 of $640,000, just under that. And the main reason we'll see is we do have an additional employee under corporate services with the new CEO position. So when those expenses are allocated out, you can see these are the amounts that each division will be required to pay for their share of the expenses. And we'll see those as we get into the individual divisions budgets. So as I mentioned, there's no revenue sources in corporate services, and the expenses are made up of the following. So we have governance expenses, which is our board member fees. And the total budget for 2023 is $64,833. And that's up from $59,000 in the previous year. And the reason for the increase is we do have some additional committees that will be coming on as a result of the new services that are going to be offered, as well as the honorariums have been increased by that 9% cost of living adjustment. For administration expenses, we have total administration expenses of $863,729, which is up from the $573,237 in the previous year's budget. As I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of the increase to those expenses is the salaries and benefits. So you're seeing the salaries and benefits are budgeted for the Chief Executive Officer's office at $499,527, and that's the additional CEO position, as well as our range increase for the remaining staff members. Financial management is up to $172,472. We have increased our external audit fees because we become a larger organization, meaning there's more work that the auditors are required to look at. We're seeing an increase in liability insurance. Some of that is to do with the increase in our premiums, as we've talked about. The others is we did get cyber insurance, you'll remember, and that was not budgeted in 2022. So it's the first year that it is included in the budget. And then our professional services are up from $25,000 to $40,000. So overall, our administration expenses are up about $290,000 for corporate services. For fiscal services, we have a budget of $8,574, which is relatively consistent with what the previous year's budget was. And that gives us our total budget for corporate services of $937,136. There's no capital expenses for corporate services. And so that brings us to our next division, which is cooperative and regional planning services. So our total budget for cooperative and regional planning is $186,852. That's up from just under $110,000 from the previous year. And you'll see when we go through the detail, What's driving that is the allocation from corporate services because those increased expenses. We do have other sources of revenue of 26,000. That's a second previous year surplus that we are bringing in, which means the net amount that needs to be raised from the participating members is $160,599. And the way that these fees are determined is based 50% on your share of the population, 50% based on your tax base, which gives an annual fee for each entity as follows. So for Arcadia, for cooperative and regional planning for 2023, their fee would be $4,245. And you can see all the different municipalities listed below.
Mary Kay, if I could just jump in, it looks like Mike Chamberlain has a question.
Certainly. Go ahead, Mike.
Under corporate services, Mary Kay, the CEO is in there. What about the ED? Is he still in there? We're not sure. The ED salary is still in there too?
Yes, that includes the executive directors and the additional CEO role.
Thank you.
Mayor Rogers?
Yes, thank you. What about the community inclusion, I don't know what the title is, the position from the Community Inclusion Network? I think it's called the Community Inclusion Coordinator, maybe? Is that position in there as well?
No, that will be in the individual budget for, it's called, it has its own fund. So we'll see that when we get to that fund. I'm just trying to see what it's called.
Called community development.
Community development, thank
So,
you.
okay, so the supplement,
For the 50,000 from ESIC?
yeah, with this,
Yeah.
and the supplementary amounts will also be in that budget. It's not included in the almost doubled budget of the
No,
salary.
that's correct. It has its own individual budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Brett, I can't see everybody on the screen where I have my screen shared. So if anybody raises their hand, if you can let me know, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so. So as I mentioned before, for the cooperative and regional planning, we do have the other source of revenue, which is our second previous year surplus. That's the 2021 surplus coming into the 2023 budget, the 26,000. On the expense side, there's only two expenses. The largest one being the allocation from corporate services. That's $166,852. And then we have $20,000 budgeted for regional planning for administration for any projects that do come up during the year, giving us our total budget of $186,852. And there's no capital for cooperative and regional planning, which brings us to our local planning services budget. So for 2023, we have a budget of $1,795,039. That compares to a budget of $1,555,000 in the previous year. And we do have other sources of revenue of $7,000, which means that to be raised from the participating members, we need $1,788,039. There are three non-participating municipalities, and that includes Fredericton, New Maryland, and Oromocto, as they have their own services for that. So this is just for those members that take these services from us. And that 1.7 million gets allocated based on the share of the tax base, 50%, and that's 100% share of the tax base. Population doesn't come into this. So for instance, for the Capital Region Rural District, for 2023, their share for local planning services would be $312,160. And you can see what that means for your individual entity. So the revenue that comes in from local planning is $7,000 from Blue Plate sales. That's up from $5,000 in the previous year. And there was no second previous year surplus to bring it to this budget. So you'll see 0 under that number. On the expense side of things, we have total administration expenses of $693,460, which is up from the 635 in the previous year. And the increases are due to those allocation from corporate services, as well as there's an increase in our salaries and benefits, as well as the office building, which is the increase to rent and cleaning. And our office equipment and supplies, we had an increased postage costs. So that's what's driving the increase there. For our planning and building inspections, we have a total budget of $607,536, which is up from $492,000 in the previous year. And the majority of the increase here is salaries and benefits, and that includes the range increase for staff. We did allocate some additional funds for a planning director, as that's going to be required in the coming year. And we have an increase to our PRAC committee, and that relates to, we made an adjustment. You'll remember the board approved their honorarium fee to be consistent with what the board is getting. So that was an adjustment that was made to the 2023 budget. For inspection services, we have a total budget of $460,146, which is up from just under $405,000 from the previous year. And again, those are increases to the salaries and benefits, as well as travel, with a wider range that they're going to be covering, as well as additional demand that's required of them. So our total planning and inspection services came in, the budget is $1,067,682. For fiscal services, we do have an increase to bank charge. The majority of our fees are being paid by credit card now, so that's why you're seeing the large jump there, because that does cost more money. We did have a second previous year deficit that had to be brought in, so that's that 5757. And then non-refundable HST is up slightly. So overall, our fiscal services have a budget of $33,897. And our total expenditures is that $1,795,039. So what that means is the tax rate is 3.8 cents per 100 for local planning services. For our capital budget for local planning, we have the purchase of computer equipment at a cost of $7,000, and that'll be paid for through the operating fund. And you saw that expense come through the previous page. So the next budget that we have in front of us is the solid waste services. And this budget is based on 81,000 tons being brought in, whereas in prior years we've used 79,000. So as Director Morrison mentioned in the Finance Committee report, we are seeing additional tonnage at the landfill. So that's resulted in additional revenue for us as well. We're using the same tonnage for our construction and demolition, which is 6,000 tons per year. So the budget for solid waste services is $10,122,015. That's up from $9.3 million in the previous year. We have other sources of revenue, which we'll see the detail for in a minute, of $6.654 million, which means that the tipping fees to come from the member communities would be $3,468,000. So what that means, bottom line, is we are able to keep our tipping fee at 102. So there'd be no increase to the tipping fee for 2023 under this budget. And I do want to mention all of our other divisions. What you see here is exactly what you can expect to pay, but solid waste is a little bit different in that your community or entity will pay based on the tonnage that they actually bring into the landfill. So if Arcadia only brings in 1,200 tons rather than 1,275 that we budgeted, you would pay for 1,200 tons. So that's important when you're developing your budgets to make sure that you're happy with this estimate. If you think it's higher or lower, you can adjust accordingly. because this is just an estimate and not necessarily what you will actually be paying at the end of the day.
Mary Kay, Director Morrison has a question.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Director Morrison, you're on mute.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Waste Services operation. There's nothing on that list for the rural community of Harvey.
Yeah, so thank you, Peter, for pointing that out, because that was the other thing we talked about at the Finance Committee. I said I was going to revise that and include it. And you'll see on my paper, number 8 is Harvey for 435 tons. But you guys got sent out an old copy by accident. So we can send this revised amount so you'll know exactly what is for Harvey.
Yeah, that would be great because I can't see what's on your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, just a little, like, small.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure that you get that sheet so that you have the most up-to-date figure.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay. So for the capital budget, we have total capital purchases of the $1,730,000. We are going to pay for $670,000 from our own funds, meaning we would have to borrow $1,060,000, and we'll see that detail when we come to the capital budget. So for revenue for solid waste, we have industrial, commercial, and institutional, which is essentially your garbage that's brought in by your businesses, your not-for-profits, that kind of thing. And that's whereas municipalities bring in about 34,000 tons per year, the ICI sector is about 47,000 tons. So it's actually larger than the municipal sector. And that's why the higher revenue there. No change to our construction and demolition budget. Our toll gate we've increased the budget to 34,000. We're seeing higher than normal asbestos, so that budget has increased to 45,000. Our total recycling revenue is down slightly by about 9,000, and that's just based on the price of the commodities that we are receiving. The rental income is for our Elm Tree site. And then the one thing that is unusual, but it is allowing us to keep our tipping fee stable without having to raise it this year, is the abnormally high second previous year surplus that we brought in from 2021. So that's 657,000 as compared to 82,000 in the previous year. So if we didn't have that additional source of revenue, or we didn't have the additional $2,000 or 2,000 tons being brought in, we were probably looking at a tipping fee increase of about $10. So that's something to consider in the next year, because we will not have this large second previous year surplus necessarily.
Mary Kay, Mayor Wilson, she has a question.
Yes. Sorry, Mary Kay, I couldn't catch you in time, but can you go back just one page for the tipping, the total budget, just the back the one page where you added Harvey. Your total at the bottom it's hard to see, but 43468.
Yes, that's correct.
But that's what we have without Harvey added, and you have Harvey added.
Yes. So what we do is we estimate what we think the municipalities are going to bring in, and the estimate is 34,000, and then we divide it out to the various municipalities. So each one of these amounts has actually changed because their share of the 34,000 changed with Harvey coming in.
So then everybody's will change, and even New Maryland's. I know it won't be much because it's just 44,370 that you're going to be adding to that, and then dividing, right?
Yes, exactly. So I'll make sure that this page gets sent out to everybody. And as I mentioned, Mayor Wilson, this is just an estimate. It's not necessarily like if your tonnage in New Maryland is different than this, then your actuals could be different.
Okay, thank you, Mary Kay.
No problem. All right, so, and then the last amount that I'll highlight is disposal of capital assets. We have revenue of 140,000, and our total revenue from other sources is 6,654,000, as compared to $5,971,000 in the previous year. So on the expense side for solid waste, we have total administration expenses of $1,561,189. That's up from $1.465 million in the previous year. And we can see there's an increase to our allocation from corporate services of about $25,000. We have an increase to our administrative salaries. That's up to just under $727,000. Again, that's the range adjustment. Our liability insurance is up to $50,000 from $38,000 in the previous year. And our professional services are up to $108,000 from $96,000 in the previous year. Our station and building expenses are relatively consistent, small decrease of $500 from the previous year. This is one area where we're seeing the greatest increase is our machinery and equipment. So we have a total budget of $1,857,755 as compared to $1.3 million in the previous year. And obviously, I don't think that's any surprise, but the major increase there is the cost of fuel. And that's just the price of diesel that we are seeing. Seems to be coming down a little bit, so let's hope it continues in that direction. Repairs and maintenance are up slightly to $796,000, and then we are seeing an increase to our insurance, so from $152 to $270. For landfill operations, we have a total budget of $2,840,338. That's up from $2,695,000 in the previous year. We have an increase to our site and road maintenance, and that's an increase of about $95,000, and that's for the purchase of rock for the roads and the site. And then our cell costs are up from $230,000 to $241,000, and that's just inflationary. For our scale house, we have a total budget of $362,805. That's up from $340,000 in the previous year, being driven by the increase in personnel costs. Our waste diversion is our recycling budget. So we have a total waste diversion budget of $1,438,075 compared to $1.165 in the previous year. We are seeing an increase to the personnel costs. We do have 3 employees who are currently with us, but are not considered full-time with benefits. They've completed their 6 months. So typically after 6 months, we would bring them on, which would mean we would offer them benefits. So that's contributing to the increase there, as well as an additional staff member in there to bring the recycling facility up to full capacity. And then we have the increase in fuel as well, from 48,000 to just under 80,000. So the important thing to also mention is we've talked about PPP a lot, and we're waiting to hear what the province has decided on that. But should that go ahead, there's significant savings that will be realized here with regard to us not having to pay the expenses that we are paying right now. So that might be some help in next year's budget if we don't see the decrease in the expenses that we're hoping to see. Our household hazardous waste budget is $212,000 as compared to $204,000 in the previous year. So total operations comes in at just under $7 million as compared to $6,035,000 in the previous year, obviously being driven largely by fuel and our inflationary adjustment. We have fiscal services. They're down in the current year's budget. We have $1,560,000 as compared to $1,849,000 in the previous year. And the major contributing factor here is we did not have to transfer as much to the generation facility as we did in the previous year. So you'll recall, if the power generation facility is going to run a deficit, the solid waste has to fund that in the budget. So last year's budget, we needed 411,000. This year it was only 35,000. So that's what the decrease is there. We've also have 170,000 for asset acquisition, and we'll see more detail when we get to the capital budget, but that includes paving as well as purchase of a couple of trucks. And we have a $50,000 transfer to our operating reserve. So overall, the expenditures come in at $10,122,000 as compared to $9,349,000 in the previous year. So just to summarize for you, because this is the largest budget that you'll be looking at tonight, overall our expenses are up about $772,000, but we do have two revenue sources that have allowed us to keep the tipping fee the same. We have that second previous year surplus of 657,000 and the additional 2,000 tons. So without that, as I mentioned before, we'd probably be looking at a tipping fee increase in the range of about $10. And that could be what we're looking at next year if prices don't stabilize and go down, or if changes aren't made to PPP that allows us to save those funds as well.
Mary Kay, Director Chamberlain has a question for you.
Yes, go ahead.
Mike, you're muted.
Sorry, under closure and post-closure expenses, 283,000, is that the cost of our financial advisor?
No, that actually relates. So each month we're required to contribute to that fund, Mike, those investments. And so it's based on the actual tonnage. So where tonnage went up to 81,000, that's part of the additional amount, as well as each year it goes up probably 10-15 cents per ton that we have to contribute to that. So that's just the transfer over to the investments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the capital budget for solid waste. So we have three pieces of equipment that will be replaced in 2023, which include an excavator, a loader, and a packer truck. And you can see the costs: 485,000, 275,000, and 300,000. And those amounts will all be borrowed through the Municipal Finance Corporation for a term of 5 years. We also are planning to purchase a water truck, a hydro seeder truck, and do some paving around the facility. So that would be 35,000, 35,000, and 100,000. So a total of 170,000 that would be paid for through operations. So that's included in our budget that we just looked at. And then lastly, we have some work to do in the Baylor Building. You may recall that it was originally supposed to go ahead in 2022, but when we went out to tender, the amounts came back much higher than the engineer's estimate. So it was determined that we wouldn't do that work just yet. So it's included in the 2023 budget at a cost of 500,000, and that amount would come from the capital reserve. So taking that 500,000 out of the capital reserve would leave an estimated balance of 1.5 million in the solid waste capital reserve. The other thing that I do want to mention is the borrowing of $1,060,000 here, plus the million we'll talk about when we get to power generation. We estimate that our debt service ratio would be just under 13%. Which is well under the 15% maximum target that we have set for ourselves. So that's good news as well, because this was the year that we expected to be quite close to that maximum. And then the other amount that will have to be approved is we are planning to lease a crew cab in 2023. The lease payments have been included in the budget, but because it's considered debt, the Finance Corp requires us to apply to get approval for that lease. So that has an estimated value of $70,000. So the next budget is the power generation facility. And it has a total budget of $1,034,833. And it has other revenue of $34,833, which is our transfer from the solid waste operating fund, meaning the amount of power that we're actually going to generate, we are budgeting at $1 million. And we sell that to NB Power. So this is the estimated kilowatt hours that we would generate in 2023 to get that 1 million in revenue. We are also expecting to do our complete retrofit on that second engine at a cost of about $1 million. And the plan for 2023 would be to borrow for that, similar to what we've done in 2022 on the first engine. So as I mentioned, for revenue, we have that just under 35,000 coming in from the solid waste operating fund. It's much less than what we needed in the previous year, and this is just to balance the operating budget. On the expense side of things, we have $21,806. That's the allocation from corporate services, which is up from 11,000 in the previous year. We have our personnel costs. And then our repairs and maintenance are consistent with the previous year. The increases to this budget come by way of insurance as well as oil. That's gone up significantly. So overall, our operations budget is $396,817 as compared to just under $355,000 in the previous year. So for fiscal services, we have a total cost of $616,210 as compared to $945,000 in the previous year. So that's gone down. We're seeing an increase in our interest costs as well as our debt repayment because we are planning to borrow for that first engine refit in 2022. So it has to start repayments in 2023. The good news is our original debenture, when we started the facility back 10 years ago, will be paid off in 2023. So we'll only have the debt for now, the 2 retrofits that we're doing to the engines, which is good news there. And we're not planning to do any asset acquisitions from operations. And our second previous year deficit is down from 442 in the previous year's budget to 970 for 2023. So overall, the expenditures are down for power generation, the total being $1,034,833. For capital, as I mentioned, we have that engine refit on the second engine. The capital cost is estimated to be $1 million, and the plan is to borrow that from the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corp for a term of 5 years. So that brings us to the new services that we're going to be offering for 2023. So the first budget is the Regional Tourism Promotion Services budget, and it has a total budget of $639,513. And each member their portion of the fees is based on their share of the tax base. So for instance, for Fredericton Junction, that means an annual cost of $4,410. In that budget, there's no revenue sources yet. So the expenses consist of the allocation from corporate services of $39,513. And then $600,000. So that's based on the proposal that we requested from Fredericton Tourism. So that's where that amount comes from. And so total expenses equal that $639,513. The next budget we have is the Regional Economic Development budget.
Excuse me, Mary Kay. Sorry.
Yes.
Looks like Jeff has a question.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the last meeting. The last meeting I was at, we rejected both of those budgets, and now all of a sudden they're there. Just wasn't sure. Do we have a special meeting and that I would missed?
So the way that we did the budget is just based on the best estimate of the cost that we had. And so that's the cost that we had. Doesn't necessarily mean they will be providing the service, but we had to choose a number and we knew that was probably the most accurate at the point that we drafted the budget.
Yeah, and I'll add that at the last meeting that we had on this matter, a board meeting, Ryan Donahue was there as well, the deputy, and we had a good exchange of information. We didn't have a vote, we didn't have a motion, but certainly Ryan and I were of the view that there was a pretty good consensus around the table that we would go with Ignite to deliver economic development services and Tourism Fredericton to deliver tourism promotion. We are in the process of working on MOUs. It will be a while yet till we have those in place. Once we have those MOUs reflecting these dollar figures and reflecting the work that will be done for each of those service providers, we will be bringing those MOUs to the board.
Okay, well, I was at the meeting where we unanimously rejected it with a vote, not just I think everyone liked to have it. So I just, I think we're being forced upon this, and we've already been told that this is coming from the minister, and we don't actually have a say in the budget, but strongly want to make sure. I know that a committee was formed around Ignite. There was no committee around tourism, so I'm hoping that if we're approving a budget, that there's a process in place to make sure that the deliverables that are being mentioned are going to happen.
Well, the deliverables in each of those cases will be outlined in the MOUs that we'll be putting in place, and it'll be up to the board to ensure that both service providers are accountable against the MOUs and the deliverables and KPIs that are identified in those MOUs. And as I mentioned, those MOUs will come before the board before they're signed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Kay, Mayor Wilson, she has a question.
Yes.
We can't hear you.
Judy, you're on mute.
We can't hear you, Mayor Shi. Sorry, you're on mute.
I realized that. I was trying to get it off mute. Maurice, could you tell me who sat on that committee for the MOU?
We've not formed that committee. I've received some recommendations from Brett, but we have not yet set the committee. And I can explain exactly where we're at, but it's going to take a couple of minutes to do that. We took the counsel that we heard from this board meeting and from the board in RSC11. There were concerns that were raised about how can we ensure that particularly the smaller and mid-sized entities are going to get value for money. So PEDAL, the Department of Post-Secondary Education, Training and Labor, is engaging in the services of David Campbell to have a look at all of the statistics that are produced by Statistics Canada and other national organizations, and how much they burrow down into smaller communities, and will give us recommendations as to what type of KPIs and measurables we can best include in those MOUs in order to bring at least some level of accountability for those service providers relative to what the expectations might be in the smaller communities in particular. So it will be some time before we have that work. In fact, I believe we're expecting to get a report from David by the end of September. So I will be working with Brett and the new CEO in the course of the next several weeks. We'll put together the committee. We'll take the draft MOUs to the committee, and then we'll bring them to the board as previously committed.
Okay, and who will be picking the people to sit on that committee to look at the MOU? Would that be you?
Well, as I mentioned at the last meeting, there's a lot of experience at working with Ignite, particularly from Oromocto, particularly from New Maryland, particularly from the city of Fredericton. So they would have representation. I know there have been a couple of other suggestions that Brett has made. There's been as well some expressions of interest. There's been expressions of interest from someone outside of the of our community, if you will, outside the entity community and the staff within the entities. So Brett and I will put our heads together with the new CEO, which I'll comment on a little bit later, and we'll form this committee But we likely won't do that until further on in the month of September. But ultimately,
Okay.
we will be forming the committee. That's correct.
Okay, because after our last meeting, I'd asked you to call me after the meeting, and I told you that one of my counselors had a strong interest. So that's not ruled out that he may not be asked to sit on this committee?
No, I shared that with Brett. We just haven't made a decision on that committee. Frankly, you know, we can form a committee, but we won't be meeting until we get the report from David Campbell, which is not due till the end of the month. So that's really why we waited, Mayor Sheen. So we will be forming the committee. I appreciated your suggestion. I appreciated your call that evening. And I did discuss it with Brett, and we will be following up and forming a committee, as I say, by the end of September. So by the next board meeting on October 4th, we will have the names of the committee.
Thank
formed.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I believe Mayor Powell, you have a question.
Yes, I do. I just wonder why our tourism before our share was 146,240, and now on this one it's up to 152,120. What happened that it went up that?
That's a great question, Mayor Powell. I'm going to have to look at that because I'm honestly not sure. But
Okay.
I'll look at it after this meeting and I'll get back to you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mary Kay.
Mhm.
And by the way, Mary Kay, could that be the their share of the corporate allocation?
I think that's what it is.
It's a good chance that it could be, yeah, because it probably we're basing the
that's my-
original number on 1.4 million.
That's my guess. Yeah. But we can check on that for you, Mayor Powell. I'm sure we will follow up.
I'll double check. All right, so on to regional economic development. Total budget of 1.4,339,513. And you can see that that's allocated based on tax base, and you can find what each member's share is here. So that budget, no revenue sources. Again, we have the same allocation from corporate services of 39,513. We have used the 1.4 million, which was the best estimate that we had at the time of preparing the budget, which is consistent with the proposal that was requested from Ignite, giving total expenses of the 1,439,000. So for community development services, we have a budget of $141,013. We have other revenue of $50,000, which we talked about this with Mayor Kate. This is the $50,000 that we'll be receiving from ESIC, meaning the net amount to be raised from the membership of $91,013. This one is based 50% on the share of the population, 50% on the share of the tax base, giving a member share for Arcadia of $2,406. You can see there's the 50,000 revenue source from Economic and Social Inclusion Corp. Our expenses are broken down as follows. So we have our allocation from corporate services of 39,000, salaries and benefits of 87,000. We've included 5,000 for travel for that individual, 5,000 for office space, 3,000 for printing and copying, and 1,500 for telecommunications, giving our total budget of 141,000.
Mary Kay, Mayor Rogers has a question.
Yes.
Hi, thanks, Mary Kay. And I don't know if this is a question for you or potentially even Maurice. We were certainly aware that the Community Inclusion Coordinator moved over to the Regional Service Commission. And I know that with that came the $50,000. Presumably that was what the position was previously being paid. I'm not certain. The additional funds were somewhat of a surprise to our city because, correct me if I'm wrong, Maurice, but I believe that the social issues file wasn't to be coming to the Regional Service Commission until 2024. That's correct. So as far as my sense was that any any money that was going to come into play for that, any additional funds from the local governments and the Regional Service Commission would come into play in 2024. I thought that the move of the Community Inclusion Coordinator into the Regional Service Commission, that was done previous to 2024 when we are supposed to be taking over the social issues. I thought that just happened as I actually didn't know. I wondered why it happened prematurely, but it seemed just to be made, that was a decision that would move over. That's one thing that was done prematurely. I don't think it's reasonable to expect, in addition to the other mandated service that we're having to take on, to also have to take on the expense of yet another mandated service that's not supposed to be coming to us until 2024. So we take real issue with the fact that suddenly we're being expected to put money into a service that's not supposed to be a service for the Regional Service Commission until 2024. So that would be one issue. Additionally, I find the salary very high, particularly given what those community inclusion coordinators were making when they worked for the province. I don't know why suddenly when they come and work for the Regional Service Commission, it has to be so much more inflated. So we have a real concern with this one for the reason, I won't reiterate them, for the reasons that I mentioned, a real concern we can't support it.
Okay, well, I'll address.
Not that I think it matters, because I guess we're not voting on it anyways, but we don't support it.
Okay, but I appreciate the question. Thank you. There are really two parts to your question: the mandate and whether it is premature or not, and then the salary. I'll leave the salary issue to Brett, because I think he's a little bit closer to that than I am at the moment. Insofar as the mandate, there were a number of mandates that were outlined in the white paper as being obligatory for the Regional Service Commissions, all 12 of them, to take up January 1st, 2023. And we all know what they are, and they include a community development component. It was indicated by the province that ESIC, which is funded 100% by the province, was an organization which we may wish to enter into discussions with to potentially take on the work that they were doing. We met, we had them go through the working group, the advisory committee. They came to the board. They presented that they would be giving us 3 envelopes of dollars, 66,000 and change for an executive director, or a SIN coordinator rather, and 2 $50,000 envelopes. The 66,000 for the salary was the max that could be provided from the funding that would come from ESIC for the salary. And as I say, Brett can comment on the increase in the salary because he's closer to it than I am. So the rationale behind community development starting in 2023 is the white paper. It was a mandated service, and it was expected and is expected that all RSCs would take it on in January. I'll speak generally about the funding, and I'll say this, that we can tiptoe into 2024 on community development, and then when the social mandate comes on, the larger municipalities, the larger RSCs rather, like Fredericton, Moncton, and St. John, and presumably there's an interest on the part of the province to have the RSCs take on an important social mandate at that time. It will be helpful to have had at least some reasonable size foundation upon which to move into that broader area of social mandate that the province will be requiring that the RSCs in the 3 cities take on starting in 2024. So broadly speaking, I think the budget amounts have been appropriately set. I can appreciate the concerns of the city of Fredericton, which currently employs at least a couple, maybe 3 community development officers. So I can fully appreciate concerns. It has been made clear to us to communicate to all that it is the full intention of the community development workers, SIN coordinator, and others, if others are engaged to do that work by the RSCs, to work collaboratively with other government community development officers that are currently in place, i.e., for example, in the city of Fredericton, or other community development type organizations that are not part of government, like the organizations that were set up following COVID, what are they called?
Resiliency Committee.
Yeah, the Resiliency Committee. Thanks, Brett. So the intent is that they're all going to work together, and obviously try and avoid the duplication that we all want to avoid. Insofar as the salary is concerned and the level that it's been set at, I know Brett is prepared to speak to that. So Brett, maybe you could comment on that part of it, please.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Maurice. As far as the salary range, the specific range for this position, I believe, is set at $60,000 to $70,000 per year. And to give you some context on that, Mayor Rogers, we weren't the first commission to advertise for this position. There were numerous commissions in the northern part of the province that initially tried to advertise. I believe even they set it at about $55,000. Most received no applicants. A few received some applicants that weren't particularly suited in those commissions' opinion for the position. And so given the higher cost of living, let's say in a more urban part of the province, it was felt that to get the right qualified individual, we really should set that range at between $60,000 and $70,000 per year. The additional costs that you see associated are the cost of benefits that would be provided to any full-time employee of the Service Commission.
What are you pricing benefits at?
The benefits
that doesn't work out. If it's between 60 and 70,000, you wouldn't get up to 87,000 with benefits.
With the pension plan, you would. That's about
okay.
11%.
Yeah,
And
so
then
so
your PPP, and then your Blue Cross.
So I guess I'll just finish. I mean, I'll go back to the original point of, yes, the community development was one of the mandate to come, as you mentioned, Maurice, but the work that's going on with that, I still see, I'm not even so sure what the community inclusion coordinator is going to do at the Regional Service Commission in the area of community development. I don't know how much. I know I'm extremely familiar with what they did at ESIC, worked with them on a regular basis. Don't quite know what that is going to look like from a Regional Service Commission perspective. My experience has been it's almost as all, except for the transportation piece that only a few of the community inclusion networks take on. It is all social issues. And so it just seems, again, it seems to me like we're adding a significant budget line for work that we're not, the community development piece is one thing, but the additional work that we're imagining going into this with an inflated salary is, I think, beyond what we're mandated to do for 2023. And I think we're all being expected to take on a lot of extra. Look, yes, Fredericton has community, we have an Office of Community Inclusion, and we'll figure out how to dovetail that work with the Regional Service Commission the way that our tourism services will, the way that all of our services will. But this one just to me is coming a little too soon. So I just would put that out there.
Thank you.
Right, I'll continue on with the next. So the next division is our Regional Transportation Services. And we have a budget for 2023 of $299,200. There's no sources of revenue. And this is allocated based 50% on share of population, 50% on tax base. So you can see for Central York, their annual charge would be $13,064. And that budget's made up of the allocation from corporate services of $39,200. And then we've assumed the partnering with an organization that would provide this service. So at a cost of approximately $260,000 to give us a total budget of $299,200. For Regional Public Safety Committee, we have a budget.
Sorry to interrupt, Mary Kay. Mayor Rogers has her hand up. Sorry to interrupt.
Mayor Rogers, you're on mute.
Thanks. Are we going to, I don't know, am I alone in, and maybe we wait and have this discussion after it's presented, but am I alone in not fully understanding what the Regional Transportation Services, what that's going to be, how that's going to unfold, what it's going to look like as far as from our regional, in our area? Like, have we given thought? So I would say, I guess, Brett, to you as ED or acting ED, have you, like, what is that going to look like in our area?
Sure. we will be moving on to that. I know that's part of the package, Mayor Rogers, but yeah, I'd be happy to address that now. We're planning on moving that through the working group and the advisory committee next week, I believe on September 13th, Tuesday. We do have a proposal. It's been provided to us. We've solicited that proposal from an organization called Urban Rural Rides. They're already active within the region. I believe they were providing services in Oromocto, Fredericton Junction, maybe a few other communities within the region. What it would look like would be it would be a subsidized ride program. It would be something that would provide transportation, ideally to not only able-bodied individuals that may need it, although the reality is it's typically to elderly folks in rural areas that are trying to find transportation into the city for essential services. But it would also address transportation needs of potentially physically handicapped people that may not be able to access more standard, I guess, transportation services that may be out there. But that would be it in a nutshell, and you'll receive a full presentation with a full overview of what's being proposed by that organization next Tuesday.
Will there also be an explanation as to how it's to work with existing public transit? I mean, we have a fully funded public transit system for the city. So Fredericton will never, ever, ever access that program. We will not benefit. We will not, there's of no advantage to us to have that program.
And I'm sure, Mayor Rogers, that the representatives that we'll be bringing in to do the presentation will be able to speak to that in a little more detail than I am. However, they've been able to operate a virtually identical program to the one that's being proposed in Moncton that also has a functional public transit system. So I'm sure that's something that they'd be able to address next Tuesday.
Yeah, but we have our own. We already have our own accessible system in place. They deliver it for Moncton for accessibility. We already have that system. We can discuss it more. I guess I only raise it now because it's in a budget that we're supposed to be advising and speaking to, and it's a huge. You're giving us information on something, what it's costing us without having any idea what the product is. I got to tell you, it's pretty baffling to me. But Mary Kay, I didn't mean to interrupt your presentation. Go on, but. This would never fly in any local government. It's not fair that we're being asked at a regional service commission level to be just saying, oh yeah, that number looks great. We have no idea what we're getting for it, but yeah, go for it. I don't think it's cool. But anyways, sorry, Mary Kay.
Director Morrison?
Yeah, I agree with Mayor Rogers. We have no idea what it's about, and we do have this urban rural ride in Hanwell. From what I can gather, it's a purely volunteer service. They have the drivers are volunteers, and yet there is this charge a reduced amount to people that use the service. So that should create some revenue, I would think.
Director Morrison, if I could just provide some input, and again, we'll move this through the approval process that's been prescribed to us. But yeah, there has been in the proposal, there has been a consideration to that revenue, although it's minimal from the riders. I believe in most cases these are low income individuals that are largely subsidized. But there are detailed cost sheets in the draft package that's been provided to us, and I believe that package, if it hasn't gone out yet, will go out I expect by tomorrow to all of the clerks, all of the CAOs, as well as the mayors who sit on the advisory committee.
Anyway, I fully agree with Mayor Rogers. These numbers are all well and good. We have no idea where they come from. They're just being thrown at us. And like I said, we have no choice in accepting them, but it would never fly any kind of a budget process that I ever sat through. I mean, if you don't know what you're approving, you don't know what the costs and expenses are, and the revenue, if there's supposed to be some and they're showing none, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But like Mayor Rogers said, carry on.
All right, so I'll move on to Regional Public Safety Committee. This is a relatively small division. It has a total budget of 6,179. Member shares are based on population and tax base. So for instance, for Central York, the annual cost would be $270. There's no revenue sources for Public Safety Committee. We have an amount from the allocation for corporate services of 4,179. A small amount where this is just a committee for printing and copying of 2,000, giving our total cost of 6,179. And then the last budget that we have to cover tonight is Regional Sport, Recreation, and Cultural Infrastructure Support and Development Services. And we have set a budget of 20,000, and that's allocated again based on population and tax base. And you can see how the allocation works. And that consists of an amount for administration for the Regional Sport, Recreation, and Culture Infrastructure. So there's no other shared services. So this is a summary of all of the new costs for the new services that are being provided. The one caveat I will say is cooperative and regional planning has always been there, but because the costs have doubled under the new structure, I've included 100% of the cost. So where it looks like the tax rate is going up in the last column as follows, it's actually slightly less than that, but to be fair and conservative, that's what we've done. So you can see what that means to the tax rate for your various entities. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'd be happy to take any questions that anybody might have.
And Mary Kay, I believe Mayor Wilson, she has a question for you.
Yes, Mary Kay, I'll try to explain this and I hope you can follow me. And this is what I wanted to ask earlier, but they said to wait for now. Under the solid waste division, there's a paragraph there. It says the impact of borrowing the $1,060,000 for capital equipment in 2023, principal and interest is estimated to be $3,610 in 2023, plus and $238,000 per year, or $2.94 on the tipping fee for 2024 to 2028. So this would mean for 2024, looking ahead, there could be a 3-cent increase in the tipping fee.
Dollar.
Sorry, yes, $3.
Yeah, that's correct, Judy. Yeah, but we will have debt that's retired as well. So we tend to borrow pretty much every year for all of our large pieces of equipment. So in 2023, we'll have a debenture that's retired. So you'll have that savings, and it generally, not always, but it's pretty consistent, and it's kind of washes out in the end.
Yeah, and you did make a comment that the tipping fee could possibly, you mentioned $10.
Yep.
Is that $10 on top of what we're paying now? It could go up that high?
That would be the increase if all things were equal and we didn't have our second previous year surplus or the additional tonnage. That's what we would have been looking at this year. So if things continue, fuel prices continue to be high, we don't get the savings in the PPP that we're hoping for, that the province rolls out, that's what we will be looking at next year. I want to be completely upfront with that.
Yes, and I'm telling you, I'm getting very scared with all these mandatory services, and it's a little bit here, a little bit there, but when at the end of the day, when you add everything up, we're not going to be able to pay for that. So here's another one, the power generation. The impact of borrowing $1 million for the capital equipment in 2023, principal and interest is estimated to be $4,200 in 2023. 231,000 per year for 2024 to 2028. So what effect would that have on the rate increase?
So we are going to have our original debenture that's paid off in 2023. So that's a savings of around 400,000. So essentially our old debenture is going to be paid off and we're going to have 2 new debentures, which should balance each other out in the end.
So and that's with the 2 new ones under the solid waste division and the power generation?
Under the power generation. They're 2 separate funds. So we have to keep them separate. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm asking under the power generation, if that does go through, would there be an increase with the rate?
It would depend on what the power generation does. So if we have major issues down there, ultimately you have to balance that fund. And if the fund can't balance itself, then solid waste is responsible. As we saw last year, we had to bring in that $400,000 transfer. So depending on what operations do, like if gas dries up and we have a deficit in the power generation, ultimately solid waste is responsible for that. We're seeing good generation right now, but I can't tell you what the future would hold.
If I could, Mayor Wilson, on the first comment about borrowing for the equipment and its impact on next year's tipping fee, I don't believe the intention was to say that that's going to drive next year's tipping fee up by $2 to $3. I believe that's simply the impact. The tipping fee, it won't increase the tipping fee by $2 to $3 because we're financing that equipment. That I don't believe that's what was implied there, Mary Kay. Is that correct?
That's
but
correct.
There is the possibility, is there not?
Well, you have some debt that's retiring. So you'll have your savings on your debt that's retiring and then the additional. The only reason that paragraph is in there, and it's good information for you all to have, but we are required to disclose that before we can apply to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board. So that's why that caveat is in there. So you know exactly what you're getting into. Right. It doesn't mean the tipping fee is necessarily going to go up by that amount because we do have the debt that's retiring, which will save us.
But I'm always looking at the possibility it could, right?
No,
it could.
Well,
and that's what I'm looking at. Yes.
To be clear, Mayor Wilson, the biggest driver on the tipping fee for next year, when Mary Kay refers to a possibility of a $10 increase, is inflation. And we're intensely fuel dependent in that operation. We don't burn gasoline. I know gas is going down in price. We use diesel. The price of our construction materials has nearly doubled in the past year. And we're dependent on those materials when we for operations. She referenced PPP. The communicated rollout date for PPP has always been in 2023. And we're hopeful that that will take place. That would represent a savings. It's unclear at this point. Hopefully we'll find out more information from the province in the coming months, but I would expect that the savings there would probably be in the order of $750,000 to $1 million annually. So it's fairly positive. And then on top of that, you know, we also have reduced construction costs for cells going forward because of that EIA that was approved last year. So we anticipate for the next 17 years to be able to enjoy the benefits of that EIA and the reduced construction costs that are associated with it, which amount to approximately $1 million a year in savings. So the borrowing, while it does have an impact, it factors into the calculated tipping fee. It wouldn't translate out into a $3 increase on the tipping fee for next year, similar to it.
For 2024, you mean?
20, that's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
It would obviously it has an impact on it, but it doesn't. You know that's not what was trying to be implied there. That it would be solely responsible for a tipping fee increase in 2020.
Well, I'm just looking ahead and not going 1 year at a time. And I don't want to come back and say, you know, you people were told during the meeting, you know, you were given heads up that it could be a possibility. I like to look ahead to the future, and I'm telling every board member tonight, I am very scared. I'm worried going into this budget and what it's going to do for each community. I really am. And I just have one last comment to make, and I'll turn the floor over to someone else. With the draft budget, and on the back, you gave us the figures there. So the Maryland's tax rate is 0.0227. So on a $400,000 home, that's an increase of $90. you might say that's not very much. It affects our municipal budget because if we want to do a capital budget, we have to raise the taxes even more. So, and especially with the Regional Service Commission, people are going to say, our residents, what are you getting for your money? And right now, I have to tell them, I have no idea. And I'm going to be very honest with my residents. I have to know on paper, and that's why we're hoping that the MOU would be done sooner than later, so that we know what we're getting. And then we have to go back to our people. But right now, it doesn't look good for our 2023 budget if we have to raise the taxes to pay for all the mandated services that we really don't see at this point. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Mayor Powell?
There, I had to unmute. I totally agree with Judy just said, and also I want to we have the urban rides in Oromocto, and subsidized by the minimal that they pay. I think it's 25 cents a mile or whatever, whoever they use the system. But we have the committee, and we got volunteers, and it's all volunteer run. And right now we're not paying a cent, but all of a sudden now we're expected to pay $28,000 without any knowledge of where the money goes to. And when we hooked up with Urban Rides, there was no mention of any payments like that with them. And then all of a sudden we're expected to pay $28,000 a year, or $28,000. So that's one point. I would like to have an explanation on the sports recreation, the cultural infrastructure. I'd like to have it's never really been explained to me what it is. I know the money's minimal, so that's not the point. I just like to understand more about what that committee is.
I'll try to answer that question, Mayor Powell. And I guess I should preface my comment with that. I'm really, it's not the role of the RSC staff to defend provincial policy. And so while I absolutely hear what you're saying as directors, I understand that. And that's not normally the way that we would put a budget package together. However, it's been, again, an atypical year. As far as that committee goes, we don't know a whole lot about that new mandated service yet. We do know that there will be a need for a committee to oversee it. And there'll be costs associated with that committee. And so we put that amount in to reflect those costs that we anticipate in the committee. But that's really it at this point.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, we're not the enemy here. We're just we're speaking for our communities, and we're looking at every angle too. So we're not.
I completely understand, Bob, and the same goes for Mayor Wilson-Shee and Mayor Rogers. It's a difficult position that we're in as RSC staff. As you know, most of you have been on our board for many years, and you're used to how we operate. This isn't typically how we bring budgets forward, and I understand that, and I understand the frustration with it. And again, it's not my place to defend the reforms that are taking place this year and any costs that may be associated or any of the new mandated services. We're here to serve you as directors and the communities that you represent, and that's our only angle. I assure you. So no, I appreciate that comment, Mayor Powell.
Leo, excuse me, Leo, you have a question?
Yeah, seeing that we're giving a rural price increase of be it 0.230, we're forgetting something. The rural area also is governed by an office that be it in Marshall Place, and that office also has a staff, but now that's also all paid for by LSDs. Our LSDs, all the money from our LSDs, the major property from our LSDs is now gone to be it City of Fredericton, Town of Ormonto, blah, blah, blah. All lot of the revenue that from the LSDs that was being paid into Marysville still have to be met. Those costs are still met. And now, let's say there was 25, and we're down to 5. Those 5 have to cover the cost of those 20 that are missing. And that isn't reflected in this budget because our increase is going to be a lot more than what they're suggesting here. This is just additional, but the additional cost that each LSD or the rural part that's left over is still got to pay for that place in Marysville. And that isn't in the budget. That's the only point I see. And tourism doesn't help me.
Mike Chamberlain, please.
Yes, just for some clarification, the minister's going to approve this budget. Has this all come about because of the controversy we're having? So it's just a way to sidestep everything, and RSC11 will have nothing to say with it about it. Maybe that's for Maurice
Maurice or Brett?
or Brett.
Well, look, thanks, and I echo what Brett just said. You know, we're not taking a great deal of pleasure in this, and we're trying to do our best for you. I know it may be hard to appreciate that, but we are working at this, and we are trying to do our best. You know, with the reform that's in place, we've heard concerns about it, and we've heard some people say that it's needed and it's a good thing and should be changed in this way or that way. With regard to the budgets, part of the decision was to have the minister in this, an exceptional year, be the one who approves the budgets. I felt, and I know Brett agrees, that we had to try and put together what we felt was a pretty good budget to allow the RSC to take off with the new mandates in 2023 and to implement and execute on those mandates effectively. We've consulted with other executive directors. I've consulted with other transition facilitators, and we've tried to be as relatively consistent as we can in terms of how we approach it and what we come out of it at the end with. And so, you know, at the end of the day, it is going to be approved by the minister. It will go to the minister with my recommendation ultimately. I am making notes. I am interested in hearing what people have to say. It may very well be that there'll be changes to the budget that's being presented this evening, but we need to reflect on that before we actually take it to the minister. And ultimately, the minister will either accept or reject it. And if he rejects it, then we got to go back to the drawing board and rework it. But at the end of the day, the decision for the minister to approve it is the decision that's been made by government, and we're just trying to execute on the mandates and the decisions that we've been asked to carry out.
Thank you, Maurice.
Thanks, Michael.
Any other questions or comments? Mayor Pleadwell.
Thank you. So understanding all the concerns and certainly the troublesome time limits placed on throwing a budget like this together. And I would add, and going through all of that budget presentation, some of the concerns that others have raised, I share myself, you know, looking at Arcadia and just reflecting on Gagetown's portion of that. You know, even though $529 may go towards sport and recreation and cultural infrastructure, we make decisions down in Gagetown, $500, whether we give it to the Girl Guides or not. And that's a big deal for the Girl Guides. So it comes down to every dollar. So I'm really looking forward to those additional, some details on those additional dollars being put towards community development, regional transportation, sport and whatnot. But just to quantify, these may not seem like, they may seem like large figures to some or small figures to some. But just taking that into context is really important, and as much detail as that can be provided, and knowing at some point it may not be great detail, will be very appropriate for myself and others to talk to our constituents in the coming months.
Thank you. Mayor Rogers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that we've discussed this before. I've been at the meetings where we've talked about having both an ED and a CEO. And I know that we've budgeted for both. Brett, can you remind me, my recollection, because my sense was that there is a general consensus amongst this board that we don't feel that we need both positions. I know that it was suggested that we budget for both, but that does not mean that we're necessarily going to have both. Is that correct?
Good question, Mayor Rogers. So as way as some background, I guess, when Don Fitzgerald is our regular executive director, the board agreed by motion in, I believe it was in January of this year, to allow Don to be seconded for a one-year period with the ability to return to his previous position in January, I believe January 31st of 2023. So for that reason, we have included the budgeted amount for the ED salary for next year. I would also say that staffing would be the decision, as I understand it, of the new CEO when they come in, and that will be their decision. The board is a policy board rather than an operational board, and the CEO will be given the authority to make staffing decisions as they see fit. But you are correct, that amount has been included for next year's budget. Even if the CEO, and I would just add this because I think there's some value here. Even if the CEO did in fact decide that, hey, you know what, we don't need an ED. I'm well capable, I can do it on my own. If the CEO did make that decision, there would have to be some compensation for Mr. Fitzgerald upon termination. So an amount has to be budgeted for in next year's budget, regardless of whether the CEO decides to keep an ED or to do things differently.
Thank you. And thank you for clarifying that. I'd also, and I really appreciated you, both you and Maurice, distinguishing the fact that you are the messengers. So you are the receivers of maybe some of our discontent, but I appreciate that you're not the ones who are putting this onto our region or onto other regions. But I am, and I know, Maurice, you said that you were taking notes to share with the minister. Is there any sense that any of this is going to be valued as input? And I mean, you would be closer to that situation. I guess I'm genuinely asking if you think that any of it will be taken into account. I know that many of us are very, very skeptical and don't think that it will be. I find it very hard to believe in an exercise that was supposed to create more democratization that we're seeing something like this occur, which just completely eliminates democracy in my mind. But so I'm just wondering if you have a sense that any of this, that what we're saying is going to be taken into account. And I just ask genuinely. I'm not, because I'm really frustrated, and I think many of us are very, very frustrated.
I appreciate the question. I appreciate your frustration. I can't answer that because I don't know. I'll give you a reason why. If I were to say, you know what, Brett, look, there's some discontent, but you know, we still firmly agree that this is the budget that should go forward. There's no saying whether the minister will approve. So you know, it's almost like you're asking me if I can make the decision that this is going to be the budget as is, or can I make the decision that it's going to be altered? I could, who knows, the budget that you're hearing and seeing tonight may get altered. And if it does get altered, there's no certainty that that will be accepted. So again, I'm kind of the messenger. I'm kind of the delivery person, if you will. And sure, I have an extra set of eyes maybe that I can put on it, and maybe a pen with an eraser on the pen or pencil. But at the end of the day, I can't even prejudge whether this is going to be the budget that goes forward or whether it's the budget that ultimately gets accepted. And ultimately that'll have to be in the hands of the minister. And I can't prejudge what decision he might make in the circumstances. I mean, there's no precedent. I mean, I don't know if any budgets, I'm almost certain no budgets have gone from RSCs, because the deadline to get it into the minister's hands, I think, as Brett alluded to, is October 7th. And the timeline is the next couple of weeks for the minister to either accept or reject the budget. So, we do have some time, and the good news is we have some time for reflection as well. So, I guess we'll have to wait and see. And I know that's not a complete answer, but it's as good an answer as I can give you. I'm sorry.
No, that's helpful. I find that helpful. Thank you. Because I think we've also can see where there are a few weeks. I think the one that many of us have mentioned is the transportation budget. And I would think that there might be some opportunity to make improvements on that, particularly. I know meeting with the advisory committee as we can provide more input. Maybe there's some opportunity there, but anyways, I'll leave it at that. But thank you for that explanation, Maurice.
No, and just if I can add on that, Mayor Rogers, Brett and I discussed the timing of that, and we were hoping to be able to have those meetings before the budget presentation today, but agendas just got really jammed, and unfortunately those meetings with the working group and the advisory committee on the urban rural rides transportation proposal will take place next week, and what we hear at those will be reflected as well to the extent appropriate as we go forward.
Will we see this again if changes are made? Will we see if a draft is updated or modified? Will we see it as a board?
I don't know, Brett. What are your thoughts on that?
I think
we could share it for information. It would seem to me, on the same basis as we're sharing it this time. We have a situation in another RSC that I'll recount where some additional information has come in since it was circulated, and a slightly updated version is being submitted to the board once again for information. So from my point, unless there's a reason, Brett and Mary Kay, that we cannot do that, I wouldn't see that as an unreasonable request.
No, and I would agree, Maurice, that it would be at the discretion of the board, and obviously it would depend on the magnitude of any changes that were made.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jeff, please.
Thanks, guys. Quick question. We had our meeting last night for the Nashwauk Rural Community, and one of the questions that came up were opting out of services. And I was under the impression that we weren't able to opt out of services. So if we go into 5-year contracts and someone's not doing their part, or we're not happy with their services, do we have that option? Talking with another jurisdiction, and they're having the same issue with massive increases in salaries from the CEO to CAO and all these different positions. And so as of, let's say, next year, can we vote? So I'd rather keep the ED at a fair living wage and get rid of the position that's extremely inflated. And, so do we have those options next year? And the last one being is this is the 5th meeting I've had in the last 3 weeks where I'm expected to present and approve a budget that I have no control over and don't have a say in. And at the end of the day, it's the minister doing so. So can we please receive a letter? We can broadcast to our communities that we don't actually have a say anymore in our communities, that democracy has failed. And at the end of the day, the minister is approving all of our budgets, and then I can sleep at night.
I believe there was a note sent out by Brett to board members indicating that the timeline and some background notes on the budget process. And I think it would include what you're looking for, because it specifically identifies that on October 7th, the draft budget goes to the minister and the minister approves it by October 20th. So I believe that's what you're looking for.
No, I more of a blanketed, our approach to this regional reform has been one of a top-down approach, and And we're forcing services and creating budgets that no community or regional service commission want, and to take responsibility, full responsibility, because this is not our responsibility. As Kate and everyone else is saying, like, we're asked to accept and put our names on budgets. For me, the Mayor Stanley, all the way to now the RSC level, that we don't even have an input in, and it's really frustrating. And to me, I don't see anyone from local government. I don't see the minister talk. I see him posting beautiful pictures of him going around the province spending all kinds of money. But you don't see the deputy and the minister and his team coming around our communities, telling our communities that they're losing everything because of this, you know what I mean? And so I've been asking from our facilitator, signs, go anything, right, to help to spread the knowledge of what's going on, because there's nothing. It's smoke and mirrors, and it's just getting blanketed. And I guess what we're seeing tonight is another large group of people frustrated with the process, right? And it's not against yourself, and it's not against Brett or any of the staff, right? Because these are things that we have to do at the end of the day. But you guys are at the conduit as well as ourselves. But so do we need to come together as a group and say, slow the process down, change the process, do something different, but something needs to change. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you for your comments.
Mayor Maury, please.
Yeah, just a comment here, and I do appreciate Maurice, and Brett there. You've got a big load on your shoulders, I know that. But, you know, as small communities and municipalities, I mean, you know, we meet with our people in our areas, and for small municipalities, we know most of the people that live in our areas. And when things like this come along, and, you know, with tourism and Ignite, I really am very skeptical whether they're going to be able to do anything for a small community like ours. I would really like to see and have a little proof of what they could possibly do. And then, you know, so when it comes time as mayors, we're responsible to our constituents to be responsible to them and in their tax dollars. And that's the scary thing. Like I've heard a lot tonight, and a lot of people are afraid. A lot of mayors are afraid what is going to happen. And I know that we are being mandated to that. And you know, it's sad that we as mayors will have to go back to our constituents and say, you know, we've got no say in this, that this is a government thing and it's mandated, you know. So there's a lot of what ifs out there, and I really think there's a lot of scary things that could happen, but I guess we have to wait and see. So that's just my comment. I'm not happy with it, but that's just me. But thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you, Dale. Okay, if there's no other comments, I would like to thank Brad and Mary Kay and staff for putting the budget together. You were able to answer a lot of, I'll say, some pointed questions, and you did a really good job at it. The work, as I've seen in the past number of years on the budget, was done very well and well thought out, whether we agree with it or not. You did a good job, and I'd just like to commend you on that. So moving along to item number 7 on the agenda is tenders, and it's for information only. Got a copy. Brett, did you want to make any comments on that?
No, Mr. Chair. I think it's self-evident. There was only one tender awarded, and it was for the supply of clear stone, I believe, for the cell construction this year.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, and the next item on the agenda is the update on local government reform. Maurice, Brett, and company.
Okay, well, I'll start, and I'm sure Brett will want to fill in. I don't know if I should make this announcement or not now, But we have selected a CEO for the Capital Region. His name is John Smith. John comes to us from the government of New Brunswick. He has over 20 years in with the province. He's worked in a wide variety of departments. He's worked at intergovernmental affairs, at public safety, at finance, at Aboriginal affairs, among others. He knows the provincial government intimately, which I think will be hugely helpful in terms of identifying potential pots of money that can complement and supplement the dollars that are being contributed to the various services that are being mandated by the province on the RSCs. John is fluently bilingual. I have had the opportunity to work with John in the past, and I can vouch for his competence and his capability. I sat on the interview committee with Chair Bigger, Derek Pleadwell, and Fredericton CEO Steve Hart, as well as a representative from the headhunting agency, and his candidacy was unanimous from those interviews. He will have a couple of meetings with us next week, Brett and I, and he'll begin in the job on September 26th, and he will work, I guess, under my direction until January, ultimately to the minister, but day-to-day report to me, and then he will report to the board full-time, obviously starting January 1st. And by the way, I didn't make the decision of where he reported. That decision was made by government. So he'll be in the position starting September 26th. And it'd be my hope that we can at least have him on for the board meeting on October 4th, I believe, is our next board meeting, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So I would hope that we could have John join us at that time for that board meeting and give you an opportunity to meet him. But as I say, having worked with him, I can vouch for his ability and his talent. He's a consensus builder. He's worked in Aboriginal affairs, so he really is a sensitive, caring, and really good at engagement and collaboration. And I think those skills will suit him well in that role. There'll be a note going out tomorrow morning to you and as well to all the RSC staff announcing that he has been successful in the competition for that position, and his start date is on the 26th, and we'll take him around to meet staff on that day and then bring him to the board, as I say, at the following meeting the next week on October 4th. That's it, Mr. Chair. Oh, well, also I should add, just beyond that, as was mentioned earlier, that we've got meetings next week with the advisory committee and the working group on the urban rural rides proposal. And there's a meeting, I think, tomorrow, and Brett can elaborate on that with the CAOs to really answer any questions they may have on the budget. Other than that, Brett, is there anything else you want to add regarding maybe community development and the SIN coordinator position?
Well, we've posted that job. I don't believe it's been awarded yet. We've completed interviews, but we're well on the way to filling that position. And you know, we had some great applicants for that job, so we were very fortunate there.
Anything else, Brett, that I've missed? Maybe.
No, I think you've covered it. You know, the next major item on our agenda will be working on the regional transportation file and the development of that plan. And as I had mentioned earlier in tonight's meeting, we will bring forward a proposal, one that will allow a rollout of that program region wide, rather than everybody paying for it and it only being rolled out in select communities over a course of several years. So, but that will be brought forward, and depending on the input from the advisory committee, I expect that we would be in a position to bring that forward to the board as a whole on our October meeting.
Okay, Judy Wilson, you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a few questions here. First of all, Maurice, how many applications do we have for the position of CEO?
Well, there were the headhunting firm advertised all the positions. I'm trying to remember this quite some time ago. I think there were like 22 that identified first choice as, and this is applicants, first choice, capital region. In some instances, they identified first choice. In other instances, they identified first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. So it really became a little complicated because, as I say, some people indicated they'd be open to taking any number of the opportunities that existed. In other cases, it was, I want to work only in RSC12, for example, the Western Valley. And so they were considered for that location. And then there was an entire screening process that took place. Obviously, the resumes were reviewed. KBRS did initial interviews with a number of people, came back to us and gave us their assessment on a list of about 10. And then we whittled that down to about 5. We did interviews with KPRS, myself, with KBRS, and 4 or 5. And then we whittled that down to 2. And the search committee, members of which I mentioned earlier, interviewed 2 candidates. And that was the custom in all the RSCs. The search committees did, at the end of the day, did 2 interviews. And in some instances, both candidates were considered capable of doing the job. So if the first one decided to opt out and not take the job, then we could revert to the second candidate. In other cases, it was one candidate was identified as being capable for the job and the other one was considered not capable for the job. So it just depended in the circumstances and the various applications we had.
Thank you. And the next one, and I know you can't say, but you must have an indication if the ED's position, Don Fitzgerald, will return in January. I mean, this is September, you got October, November, December. Perhaps he's already made a decision. So I don't think he's going to wait till December 1st to let us know if he's coming back or not.
I don't know that for certain. I've not spoken.
Okay.
I've spoken to Don about a number of things. I'm on a call with him every Monday morning. But I've known Don, but I can't say that he and I, go and have a beer together once a month or something. I don't have that kind of relationship. He's a friend, but he's a friend really through the work that we've really done in the course of the last 8 months. I've not asked him that question, and I don't know for certain whether he is coming back or not.
Okay. Well, I didn't. I meant as a colleague, not as a friend.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that would have an impact on the budget. And Maurice, in all honesty, I'm not taking my frustrations out on you, Mary Kay, or Brett, but I am very frustrated at the whole process. And I think there's ways that budget can be trimmed down instead of just throwing the figures out. And I'm just going to put it out there to please the minister, but we don't work that way. And, now, and not pointing fingers at anyone, I had asked a question one time about the ED's position and the CEO, if we needed both. Well, braid it up. Okay. I brought it up one time and then I'm saying, no, it's already included in the budget. Well, tonight, Brett, you made a very good explanation as to why it was being in the budget. And I think we have to be more open with each other and relay the information. Because if I'd known that like a month ago, then I wouldn't keep saying, no, let's get rid of the ED's position. That's money that we don't need in our budget. But I mean, you made a very clear explanation tonight, and I appreciate that. So we can all learn something from this and moving forward, if we could just be more open with each other. If we have information to share, please share it. And the last one, for the working in the advisory meeting next week, are we going to have a package of that? Did I hear it might go out in the morning? Or am I hearing things? like we're going to get a package information before the meeting, aren't we?
Absolutely. Mayor Wilson, that package is going out tomorrow morning. It may even be going out this evening. And I take full responsibility for that.
Oh, no, that's okay.
But it'll be coming from Kelly, and I only provided it to her this afternoon. And I know she's been busy, but that is a priority, and we're going to get that in your hands as soon as possible.
Okay, and Mary Kay, thank you for the excellent presentation. And Mr. Chair, did I doze off or something? Did we pass a motion to receive the finance report, the draft budget?
Yes,
We did?
yes.
I don't remember voting on it. There was a motion on the floor?
Yeah.
Not the first one,
Which mo-
number B?
No, there was two motions on the floor. The first one was passed and we had to amend it because I said the wrong date. And the
Right,
second motion was passed as well.
okay, and that motion for the second one, that wasn't to adopt the draft budget, was it?
Not to adopt the draft budget, no.
No?
Just to adopt the report of the budget committee or the
Adopt
finance
the
committee.
report as received. Okay,
But after
thank
that,
you.
it's in the minutes. It's in the package, whatever the motion is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Maurice or Brett on update and local government reform? Is everybody? Mayor Powell.
Do you know, Brett, what the date of the advisory committee is going to be?
Yeah, the Mayor Powell, it's scheduled currently for Tuesday, September 13th. I believe the advisory committee is scheduled for 3 p.m.
3 p.m. Okay, I'm going to be away, but I mean, hopefully I can contact you through Zoom from where I'm going to be up in Cape Breton. So hopefully I can connect. I just wanted you to be aware of that. Just in case you don't hear from me, you know, I'm either in jail in Cape Breton or someplace else. I know Mr. Don Smith. He's a very capable person and he's very level-headed, and I think it's a pretty good choice. So I just wanted to add that, Maurice. So.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, I'd move for adjournment.
Powell.
So moved, second.
Moved by Bob Powell, second by Judy Wilson-Shee. The meeting is adjourned at 8:35. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good
Thanks,
night.
all.
Night.
Good night,
Everyone.
all.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Night all. Have a good night.